Welcome to Medical Upgrade, a channel where we explore and discuss a wide range of health and medical topics presented in a clear, simple, and accessible way. Today, we're going to look at four foods that, when consumed frequently, may have negative effects on your health. First food, sugary drinks. This includes soda, sweetened iced tea, energy drinks, sports drinks, and many packaged fruit juices with added sugar. These beverages deliver large amounts of sugar in liquid form, which is one of the fastest ways to increase total calorie intake. Liquid sugar behaves differently from sugar in solid foods. Because it is consumed quickly and contains little or no fiber, it does not produce the same feeling of fullness. As a result, the calories from sugary drinks are usually added on top of normal food intake rather than replacing other calories. When large amounts of sugar enter the bloodstream rapidly, blood glucose rises and the body releases insulin to move that glucose into cells. If this pattern happens frequently, it contributes to metabolic stress. Over time, repeated spikes in blood glucose and insulin are associated with higher risks of weight gain, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes. Sugary drinks also place a specific burden on the liver. Excess sugar, especially fructose, is partly converted into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. This process contributes to fat accumulation in the liver and can promote the development of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Large epidemiological studies consistently show that people who consume more sugary beverages have higher risks of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. These findings appear across many populations and remain significant, even after adjusting for other lifestyle factors. A practical change is straightforward. Replace sugary beverages with water, sparkling water, or unsweetened tea or coffee. This single substitution can remove hundreds of unnecessary calories per day without changing the rest of the diet. Second food, processed meats. Processed meats include bacon, sausages, hot dogs, salami, ham, and many packaged deli meats. These products are not simply cooked meat. They are preserved through processes such as curing, smoking, salting, or the addition of chemical preservatives. One common group of preservatives used in processed meats is nitrites and nitrates. These compounds help prevent bacterial growth and maintain color and flavor, but they can also react during processing or digestion to form substances called nitrosamines, which have been linked to cancer development in experimental studies. Another issue is sodium content. Processed meats typically contain very high levels of salt. Regular consumption of high sodium foods is associated with elevated blood pressure, which is a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease and stroke. Large epidemiological analyses have repeatedly found associations between high consumption of processed meat and increased risks of several chronic diseases. The most consistent evidence concerns colorectal cancer, where daily consumption of processed meat has been associated with a measurable increase in risk. For this reason, international health organizations classify processed meat as a carcinogenic food category. This does not mean that eating processed meat occasionally will cause disease. The concern is frequent consumption over many years. When processed meats become a routine part of daily meals, the cumulative exposure to salt, preservatives, and processing-related compounds increases. A practical adjustment is to reduce frequency and portion size. Replacing some processed meats with fresh protein sources such as poultry, fish, eggs, legumes, or minimally processed meat can significantly improve the nutritional profile of a diet. Third food, white bread and products made from refined flour. This includes white bread, sandwich bread, crackers, breadsticks, pastries, cookies, and many breakfast cereals. The issue is not carbohydrates themselves. The issue is what happens to the grain during refining. During this process, the bran and the germ are removed. These parts contain most of the fiber, vitamins, and protective compounds. What remains is mostly starch, the part that is digested the fastest. This changes how the food behaves in the body. Foods with little fiber are absorbed more quickly, provide less satiety, and make it easier to feel hungry again soon after eating. A breakfast based on refined flour can give quick energy, but the effect often fades quickly. After a short time, blood sugar drops and it becomes easier to crave more food, especially snacks. Two concepts help explain this. The first is the glycemic index, which describes how quickly a carbohydrate containing food raises blood glucose. The second is the glycemic load, which takes into account both the speed of absorption and the actual amount consumed. When refined flours and rapidly digested starches become the base of daily meals, blood glucose tends to fluctuate more often, and the body must release insulin repeatedly to manage these spikes. Over time, diets with higher glycemic index or glycemic load are associated with a greater risk of metabolic problems, including type 2 diabetes. In contrast, higher consumption of whole grains is associated in many analyses with lower risks of cardiovascular disease and mortality. This does not mean that white bread alone causes disease. It means that when refined grains replace foods rich in fiber, the overall metabolic profile tends to worsen. The most effective correction is not eliminating carbohydrates. It is improving their quality. Replacing part of refined products with oats, barley, farro, brown rice, or true whole grain bread can significantly change the nutritional profile of a diet. A simple rule helps when reading labels. The word whole or whole grain should appear among the first ingredients. Dark color alone does not guarantee that a product is truly whole grain. Fourth food, ultra-processed snacks and ready-to-eat meals. Ultra-processed foods are not simply foods that come in a package. The term refers to products that are industrially formulated using ingredients rarely used in normal cooking. These often include refined starches, added sugars, modified oils, flavor enhancers, emulsifiers, and other additives designed to improve texture, shelf life, and taste. The practical problem is not one single ingredient. The problem is the overall effect these foods tend to have on eating behavior. Ultra-processed products are typically engineered to be very easy to eat, very palatable, and high in energy density. This combination makes it easier to consume large amounts of calories quickly, often without feeling full. This effect has been demonstrated in controlled research. In a clinical feeding study where participants alternated between an ultra-processed diet and a minimally processed diet, people consumed about 500 additional calories per day during the ultra-processed phase and gained weight. When they switched to the minimally processed diet, calorie intake dropped and weight decreased. Importantly, participants were allowed to eat as much as they wanted in both conditions. The difference came from the type of food, not from imposed calorie restriction. At the population level, large reviews of epidemiological studies consistently find that higher consumption of ultra-processed foods is associated with increased risks of obesity, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and overall mortality. These associations vary in strength across studies, but the overall pattern is consistent. The most effective strategy is not to eliminate every packaged food, building most meals around minimally processed foods, such as fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, eggs, fish, and unsweetened dairy, naturally reduces the proportion of ultra-processed products in the diet. The key change is to avoid letting ultra-processed products become the foundation of daily eating. A simple rule helps identify them quickly. If the ingredient list is long and includes substances that would not normally be used in a home kitchen, such as flavor enhancers, emulsifiers, syrups, or protein isolates, the product is very likely ultra-processed. Fifth food, fried foods and deep-fried fast food. This category includes French fries, fried chicken, nuggets, battered foods, and many takeaway items cooked in deep oil. The issue with frying is not only the ingredient itself, but the cooking method. During deep frying, food absorbs fat from the oil, which significantly increases its energy density. In simple terms, a small portion of fried food can contain a large number of calories. Frying also exposes oils to very high temperatures. At these temperatures, chemical changes occur in the oil, including oxidation and degradation of fatty acids. When oils are reused repeatedly, which often happens in commercial frying, these changes become more pronounced. Some of the resulting degradation products can end up in the fried food. From a nutritional perspective, fried foods combine several risk factors at once: high calorie density, high fat content, and often high sodium levels when prepared as fast food. This combination makes it easy to consume more calories than intended. Large observational studies consistently show a pattern. People who consume fried foods more frequently tend to have higher risks of cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, and type 2 diabetes compared with those who consume them less often. Some analyses also show a dose response relationship, meaning the risk tends to increase as fried food consumption increases. However, these studies also note variability between populations and lifestyle factors, so the relationship is not identical in every context. This does not mean that eating fried food occasionally will automatically harm health. The issue is frequency and dietary pattern. When fried foods become a regular part of the diet, they can contribute to excess calorie intake and cardiometabolic risk. A practical adjustment is to reduce frequency and modify cooking methods. Baking, grilling, pan searing, or air frying can produce similar textures with significantly less added fat. When frying is used at home, limiting oil reuse and avoiding excessively high temperatures can help reduce oil degradation. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more content.